deck. Have you ever wondered what it would take to convince a bank to just hand you millions of dollars? No business plan, no collateral, just a single powerful name. Well, one woman in the Gilded Age did exactly that, and her story is absolutely wild. This is the tale of Cassie Chadwick, the woman who claimed to be Andrew Carnegie as illegitimate daughter and brought the financial world to its knees. Our story begins not with Cassie, but with a woman named Elizabeth Bigley, born in a small town in Ontario, Canada, in 1857. From a very young age, Elizabeth, or Betty as she was called, had a flair for the dramatic and a deep-seated desire for a life of luxury. She was a daydreamer, constantly fantasizing about being a wealthy heiress. Her first brush with the law came when she was just 22. She tried to use some forged documents to claim an inheritance that didn't exist. She was arrested but got off on a plea of insanity. This was just a warm-up act for what was to come. Over the next few years, Betty moved around, adopting different aliases and perfecting her craft. She worked as a fortune teller, a clairvoyant, and even married a doctor named Wallace Springsteen in Cleveland. She used his name and reputation to run up massive debts all over town before he divorced her, and she was eventually sentenced to 9.5 years in prison for forgery. But Cassie, as she was now starting to call herself, was a master of manipulation. She only served 3.5 years before being paroled. Once she was out, she reinvented herself completely. She moved back to Cleveland, a city she knew well, and married a wealthy, well-respected widower, Dr. Leroy Chadwick. Suddenly, she was Mrs. Cassie Chadwick, a woman of high society. She had the mansion, the clothes, the diamonds, everything she had ever dreamed of. For most people, this would have been the ultimate victory. But for Cassie, it was just the beginning. She wanted more. She wanted a fortune so vast that it would make her new husband's wealth look like pocket change, and she knew just the name to get it: Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was the richest man in the world at the time, the equivalent of a modern-day tech billionaire. His name was synonymous with unimaginable wealth. Cassie's grand plan was audacious and brilliantly simple. She orchestrated a chance encounter. She arranged to have a business associate of Andrew Carnegie travel on the same train as her. During their journey, she accidentally dropped a bundle of papers. The man, being a gentleman, picked them up for her. Inside, he saw promissory notes for millions of dollars, all signed with the name Andrew Carnegie. Cassie acted flustered and begged him not to say a word. She tearfully confessed that she was Carnegie's illegitimate daughter. She explained that he was providing for her lavishly but secretly to avoid a public scandal. The story was perfect. It was juicy, believable, and explained why the richest man in the world would be giving a woman in Cleveland millions of dollars. The man, completely fooled, introduced Cassie to his friend, a banker named Charles Beckwith. Cassie repeated her performance. She showed Beckwith a document, supposedly a trust agreement, that named her as the recipient of a $400 million inheritance upon Carnegie's death. And as a final masterful touch, she arranged a visit to New York. She told Beckwith she was going to visit her father. She had him drop her off at the corner of Andrew Carnegie's Fifth Avenue mansion. She walked up to the door, was led inside by a maid, and a few minutes later, emerged, waving a large package. What Beckwith didn't know was that Cassie had previously visited the mansion and befriended one of the housekeepers. The whole thing was staged, but for the banker, it was all the proof he needed. He was convinced his bank, Citizens National Bank in Oberlin, Ohio, gave Cassie her first massive loan, a cool $240,000, using the Carnegie inheritance as collateral. That's over $8 million in today's money. And once one bank was in, the others followed like dominoes. Why bother with due diligence when another reputable bank had already signed off? Cassie was a financial celebrity. Bankers weren't just lending her money. They were falling over themselves to do it. They saw her as a gateway to the immense Carnegie fortune. They imagined being the preferred bankers for the richest family in America. For the next 8 years, Cassie lived a life beyond imagination. She owned multiple homes filled with priceless art and furniture. She had closets filled with hundreds of pairs of shoes and dresses she never wore. She bought a solid gold organ. She would go on shopping sprees and buy out entire stores, handing out lavish gifts to her maids and even to strangers on the street. She was spending money faster than anyone could comprehend. running up debts that totaled somewhere between $10 and $20 million. In today's terms, that's a staggering $300 to $600 million. She juggled her loans with incredible skill, borrowing from one bank to pay the interest on a loan from another, a classic pyramid scheme. But like all such schemes, it was doomed to collapse. The house of cards began to wobble when a Boston banker who had loaned her nearly $200,000 finally sued her to get his money back. The lawsuit set off a chain reaction. Other creditors panicked. The news broke, and the scandal exploded. The headline was sensational. Is Mrs. Chadwick the illegitimate daughter of Andrew Carnegie? The public was captivated. When reporters finally asked Andrew Carnegie himself about the situation, he was famously baffled. He reportedly said, "I have been signing notes for a number of unprotected females lately, but I do not recall this one." He denied ever knowing Cassie Chadwick. The truth came out. There was no inheritance. There were no secret promissory notes. It was all a lie. The banker, Charles Beckwith, who had given her that first big loan, discovered that the securities Cassie had locked in his vault were completely worthless. The fallout was catastrophic. His bank, Citizens National Bank, collapsed entirely, wiping out the life savings of countless ordinary people in the town of Oberlin. The shockwaves hit the entire Pittsburgh financial system. It was a massive crisis, all caused by one woman's fantasy. Cassie was arrested in New York, found hiding in a hotel with thousands of dollars strapped to her body. Her trial was the media event of the century. People lined up for hours to get a seat in the courtroom. Cassie played the part of a frail, wronged woman, but the evidence was overwhelming. She was found guilty of conspiracy to defraud and sentenced to 10 years in the Ohio penitentiary. Even in prison, she couldn't stop the act. She brought with her trunks full of fine clothes and furniture to decorate her cell. But the harsh reality of prison life eventually broke her spirit. Her health failed, and she died in prison just 2 years into her sentence, on her 50th birthday. Cassie Chadwick's story is more than just a tale of a clever con artist. It's a window into the greed and gullibility of the Gilded Age. She didn't just sell a lie, she sold people a dream they desperately wanted to believe. Bankers weren't just fooled by her story, they were blinded by their own ambition. They wanted a piece of the Carnegie pie so badly that they abandoned all common sense. Cassie understood human nature, our desires, our vanity, and our willingness to believe in a fantasy if the reward seems great enough. She was a master performer who turned the world of high finance into her personal stage. And for a while, she was the star of the show. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's greatest scams, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. We'll see you in the next one.